Good morning, everyone, or what we say, howdy in College Station, Texas. I'm Bala Shetty. I'm a professor in the Information Operations Management Group here. Thank you for joining us from pretty much all over the world. But what I first want to do is we have Sushil here, our Executive Director. Sushil has been instrumental in his support of this initiative. We started this 3 years ago. It's worked out quite well for us. There are a lot of demand for this kind of sessions, especially before they join the market. So I want Sushil to open with a few words of wisdom, advice. Sushil?
Thank you, Bala. Welcome everyone from all around the world. As Bala said, I think we have members from almost 25 to 30 countries who are attending this seminar. And these seminars have been designed to help the doctoral students so that they can progress in their career during their doctoral students here and maybe beyond. And this is our third year, and these seminars are very successful. Here you get the opportunity of meeting renowned researchers and professors who will give you advice. You can ask questions, and sometimes you don't get answer to your questions at your school, or you like to know what is happening beyond your school in the doctoral program. So here is an opportunity for all of you to come together, interact with each other, and talk to the senior people in the field. The field is POM. And as you know, POMS is an international, or you may not know, POMS is an international organization serving the interests of the people who are interested in this field, POM. I don't know how many of you are members of the society POMS, but membership for the students is free, and you get our announcements, information about the society, what is happening, access to the journal. So if you are not a member, I'll advise immediately after this seminar, get enrolled and become a POMS member. And if you have any questions, you can always write to me. My email you'll find on the website. Thank you again, and welcome again. Thank you. Bala, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sushil. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Rakesh, my collaborator on this project. I couldn't have done this without Rakesh's extensive support. Rakesh, thank you, Rakesh. Ohio State is represented well today. We have Aravind and Rakesh. The workshop works. I just want to very briefly, we have teams. Today's theme is interviews. Today's theme, search process and making your case. And we have three different themes every month, one in September. And the last theme, I bring in the most recent graduates from last year. So kind of, share their experiences as to, what they would have done differently or what they did right or wrong last year. So today's we talk about pretty much focus on the search process and how best to make your case. But before that, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel. I want to thank them for taking busy time off their schedule. We have all three are eminent scholars, fantastic teachers, and they're also administrators. We have Professor Chandrasekaran, who is Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and Exec at Ohio State. We have Mike Galbreth, Department Chair at Tennessee, and we have Janice Carrillo from Florida, and I saw she also served as an administrator, although temporarily at some point. So you get experience from knowledge and wisdom from all three areas, business, research, teaching and service. So thank you, all three of you, for being with us. The way we do this is I've asked questions of the panel, and panel can take time, and Rakesh will kind of watch our chat questions. I'm not very good at multitasking, so chat questions also Rakesh can interject anytime and to present questions from the chat from our participants. So thank you. So and all three of you, we are represented by the powerhouses of supply chain operations management. I mean, you can't get any better than Ohio State, Tennessee, and Florida. So what I would like to first know is kind of search. You're all three public schools, right? We are represented well by private schools in the next session. Tell us about the process in your respective schools, what you're looking for, what our applicants ought to be looking, as they, go through this process. Every school is different. I mean, we have a very different process than probably your school. So I want to kind of three different perspectives on what the process looks like. So we'll let Janice go first from the East Coast.
Sure. No problem. So I think, it's been my experience that the process, the search process when we're hiring new candidates is fairly similar at most universities. There may be some differences in the way they handle things. But just so first of all, once we're approved to have a position, sometimes there may be specific funding at the university for a position. Like many years ago, we had funding to support somebody who had a logistics background or some kind of specific ask like that. I think 3 years ago, we got funding for AI type activities. And so we really had to have somebody who was associated with that. But in general, usually we're just looking for the best candidates. I sit in a group that is information systems and operations management. So we oftentimes have candidates from both sides, although we hire, OM. I've also been on search committees for IS too. So in the department, we have a committee. We form a committee. We send out announcements about the position. We usually accept applications before the conferences. We look to interview at the conferences if we can. We'll call you in for, I guess, like half hour interviews. Then we'll decide who are the best finalists, and we invite usually 3 to 4 candidates in for a visit. We usually make that decision sometime in January about who we're going to have in. We bring those folks in, interview them, and then the faculty get together and votes, who's our top ranked candidate, etc. So now that's the process, the overall process. I think in general, we're looking for the best candidate in terms of your research agenda. I think that's very important. Can you do research? What is your research productivity so far? Clearly, somebody in the group, the department has to be interested in your research too. I know that sometimes there's a discussion about, some departments hire people because they want more of a portfolio. They want researchers. We don't have anybody who's doing this or that, so we want to target that. Some departments take the other tack. Oh, hey, we want to hire somebody who does very similar research to us, what we do, so we can be successful. We can support them. So I've seen both strategies over time. So in general, that's the strategy. That's what we're looking at. Of course, your teaching evaluations are important too, and also your recommendations.
Yes, I'll be asking very specific questions later.
Okay.
But Mike, if you could kind of explain the general process at Tennessee, what the process looks like, and I guess Janice is correct that generally they're the same, but there may be some things are a little different between universities. So Mike, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. At Tennessee, very similar to what Janice described. But as Janice mentioned, sometimes searches are more targeted, where we have a specific area that we're looking for. Sometimes they're much more broad, what I call kind of best athlete searches, right? We're just looking for the best researcher. We don't really have a strong preference in terms of subject matter expertise. Yeah, we start with kind of the broad funnel of posting it out there and getting the initial set of applications in. We usually ask for, a CV and maybe a brief statement, and we use that to funnel towards the conference interviews. And then it's conference interviews to campus visits to offer. And what we're really looking for, and we'll dive into the details more later, but that process is really focused on trying to find someone who we think fits well here and who we think can be successful in all aspects of the job. So maybe we can talk more about how best to put that foot forward to convince a school that you're equipped to be successful in that role. But we go through the standard process, and really the first big screen is at the conferences, which is usually in POMS or DSI or both. We do that initial conference screen. And I'll say, just like Janice, I'm also in a broader department. We have OM as well as statistics is in my department, as well as machine learning, applied machine learning, which is a small but growing area here. So sometimes we'll have targeted searches in each of those three areas. But regardless, in our group, even if we're looking specifically for OM, you will be interviewing with statisticians and machine learning people who are going to want to get a comfort level that you can fit into this broad department and can speak with them as well.
Aravind, what does it look like in Ohio State?
I'm not going to repeat a lot. By the way, good to see everyone here, and good luck with the job market. I'm sure, again, I remember me being in job market like 18 years ago or so. Everybody is worried at this point, but I'm sure Janice and Mike will tell you, there is a job out there for everyone. So again, don't be afraid of it, experience the market. There is a lot of things that you'll learn. So good luck with that. With that being said, again, I have very little to add on to this particular question. Again, very similar to what Janice and Mike had said. We are a big public school, and our department is called the Operations and Business Analytics, so which includes both the operations, supply chain, as well as business analytics. And we typically have targeted search, like for instance, last year we were looking for a person who was interested in teaching service operations and things like that. 2 years ago, we wanted a person who was the best player. That's where we were lucky to get Rakesh. So we typically have a search criteria either to fill a particular class or avoid a person left after they turned over. But overall, the process is very similar to what you saw in Florida and Tennessee. We do interviews at the conferences, in POMS being one, DSI being the other. The only thing I would add to that is now with the advent of after COVID, we found that, again, waiting between conferences made less sense. So we would also do Zoom interviews. I'm sure both Mike and Janice, their teams would do the same thing. Again, COVID has taught us a lot of good things. One thing is how to really virtually connect. So we do a lot of those kind of interviews. And we typically fly them out earlier. So in the last few years or so, Ohio State had practiced the idea of, again, flying them earlier and getting the job market done even before Christmas. Again, that's one thing we found, that if there is a person out there who's interested in joining us, and I don't want them to wait till the other. If they want Ohio State to be the first to offer, then again, we'll be gladly working with them. So we've been doing that and fairly successfully in the last few years, where again, our market ends by December. Again, that's not common. Sometimes, again, you might have to wait till because some people might hold your offers and all, but we try to again see if there is any possibility of ending it sooner, because that way there is more commitment. But other than that, very similar approach to what Tennessee and Florida has to offer.
Hey, thank you, Aravind. So we spend all of us, I suppose, I've been an administrator. I was an administrator for a long time. We spend an enormous amount of resources on getting MBA CVs ready. Right? Resumes ready. I mean, I have done that. I'm guilty of that too, for a very good reason. But we don't spend that time on PhD students. We don't really teach them how to prepare the best package, how to put the best foot forward in terms of their cover letter, in terms of their resumes. I want to hear from you as to what does a very good resume, a cover letter looks like. Mike, you go first, Mike, because we're going from East to Midwest, I think, yeah.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts on this. As someone who has reviewed a lot of these packages, as everyone on the call has, I think, the goal is to get the conference interview, right? When you're putting your packet together, you want to get over the first hurdle, which is you're trying to get invited for a conversation, as Aravind said, maybe over Zoom, but you want to get the attention with that CV and with maybe a research statement to get your kind of foot in the door with a conference interview. And to me, I think as people review those packets, they're really looking for a few key things that convince them that you're going to be successful. So one, I mean, I think kind of showing that you've done your homework and prepared. So some sort of a customized, non-boilerplate cover letter, right? So say you've taken an interest in the school, maybe you call out something specifically about what they're doing that you like. I think that can kind of catch someone's eye. And then of course, some things on the CV, a lot of schools are going to be screening for your research record, right? Your publications. Do you have anything published, or do you have anything in revision at journals that would lead to success at their institution, right? So that's nothing, that ship has sailed by the time you're putting the CV together. That's more advice for now. You want to get to that point, but I think in terms of signaling that you could be a good choice, you want to have something in there that makes it clear that you can be successful research-wise and teaching-wise. So research-wise, not just here are my papers, but some sort of statement that you have a plan, right, towards tenure, right? I think like any department chair or dean, we don't want to hire anybody that's not going to make tenure, right? So the more you can convince this person is on a clear path, right? They already have this paper, they've got research plans that are taking them somewhere, and they can really articulate, hey, I've got on the research side, I've got things well thought out. And I think also on the teaching side, Janice mentioned some teaching evaluations. These are business school jobs. The teaching bar is generally higher than other colleges. So especially with the people who are going to make the offer, like the deans, they're going to want to have some comfort level that you can be a good teacher. And you're really able to do that once you get to campus, and you can really show in your job talk how you can get up in front of a crowd. But even in the packet, if you can put something in there that gives an indication this person can be successful, it's teaching evaluations, it's a statement about how you approach teaching or even TAing if you were unable to teach. But I think that if in that very short packet that you send out, and we all read hundreds of them every time, if you can have something that pops out, this person seems to have it together on the teaching and research side where, I feel like they could be successful at our school. That's what I would be going for, Bala, in putting that initial packet together.
Aravind, any thoughts on that front?
To add to that, I think all are spot on what Mike was saying. The cover letter is very important. I mean, like I always thought, like people, like when I started reviewing these things, I really liked reading cover letters because you could clearly identify a person who's just applying for a job versus a person who's interested in your institution. There is a lot that person who's interested in your institution is putting there. I mean, it's not just about calling out names of faculty, but again, like doing some research about the school. Like for instance, at Ohio State, we have lots of centers of excellence. So a good cover letter that people send out here is to like talk about, okay, how the person coming here might work, not just in terms of research and teaching, but also collaborate. Again, we believe that's an important asset for our incoming professor, how they're taking advantage of these centers. Doing some extra work and putting it there is absolutely important. But I agree with Mike, the order winner in anybody's packet, again, we're talking about different steps. I'm sure, Bala, you're going to ask questions about the various steps. This step, the first packet step, your number one priority is to go from those 100 or 200 packets to like 30 of them, where they are now putting into an interview part, where they're actually conducting interviews with you in a conference or through Zoom. So the number one criteria to bring from there to here is, again, how much how much you're knowing about the institution, but always research and teaching. Again, research is like, are you really doing work where it's in advanced stages? I mean, like you need not have anything completely published. Or are you having a research area? Not just like, okay, I'm doing papers where I have paper on service ops in one and healthcare and other, supply chain and other. Is your focused area, is your research in a focused area? That's at least what we let Ohio State look out for is there consistency in how you're doing in research? And are there a couple of publications that are in the advanced rounds? I mean, like, yes, it'll be great to have a published paper by then. And we do have some candidates that come out with published papers, but are you actually focusing in an area, and are you speaking in that area consistently in advanced round? Those are the criteria that we would look out for. The teaching element, we would really look out for in the evaluate in the CV. But the 20 minutes that we talk to you in a conference, we can get that. So I'm sure like Mike and Janice would agree that in 20 minutes or even in 5 minutes, we know exactly whether you're going to be a good teacher or not. So we wouldn't pay that much attention there, at least the way I look at research and I look at how much you know about my institution.
Aravind, thank you. Participants, if you have any questions, feel free to put them on chat. You can address them directly to one of the panel members or all the panel members. We will read that to them, and I'm sure be happy to respond. So don't hesitate to put your questions on the chat. Janice, what does a good resume look like to, and a cover letter looks like to you, Janice?
Sure. I mirror everything else. I really don't have a whole lot to add to that. The cover letter, I think if you put some effort in personalizing it, that can go a long way. Also, your CV should be very clear. Somebody should be able to look at that the very first thing and to see what is the status of your research, what is if you have something accepted, or if it's revise and resubmit, or how that is. So you need to be very clear with that. The teaching, if you've got teaching evaluations and they're good, put the numbers on there too. That's something I agree that might not make that stand out in a pile, but on the other hand, if it's clear, it could be a good differentiator in the end. Bala, can I speak a little to the research statement, or is that another question? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
All right, sorry. Janice, please go ahead, certainly.
Okay, sure. A research statement, not all schools ask for them, but I think it's very important. And I think this goes to what Aravind was saying about you need to be able to communicate a clear research stream and research direction. And in the research, I can look at your Vita and I can see what you've done, but I need to know that, I need to know that you're going to have a viable research stream for the next few years. And so I think the research stream is really where you can talk about that. And you can say what you've done, how it fits in, what your grand plan is for the next 5 years. So that's really what a lot of schools are looking for, that not only that you've got a good foot in the door, that you're going to be able to be successful, you've got some good ideas for how you're going to be successful in the next 5 years.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. Mike, you want to add anything on the research statement, Mike? Anything else you want to add on the research statement?
No, I think they articulated what I was trying to say much better than I did, right? You've got to lay out a plan. It's not just I have these 2 papers. It's I have this stream that's going to get me, to a long-term success, a tenurable record, a meaningful contribution to an area. So I would say it's very important to try to get that point across.
Well, another question that comes up often, when some other graduate students, we tell them the resume has to be 1 page and the letter has to be concise. I don't believe that is the practice for doctoral students, but could you talk about that a little bit in terms of, is there any kind of restriction on the length of the cover letter or the resumes? Mike, you want to address that?
No restriction. Yeah, you definitely should not limit yourself to 1 page as far as I'm concerned. I mean, put the resume, the resume needs to be research first, probably. But it needs to, I would put the talks you've given on there. I would put what you need to do. Yeah, I have more details on the resume. You don't need to put, obvious skills. Please don't put skills Microsoft Office, right? That's not useful. I assume I use Microsoft Office, but publications, technical or software coding skills, teaching experience, and if it takes 3 or 4 pages, that doesn't bother me at all personally. It probably won't be that long, but yeah.
Again, I don't have any specific page limits or something for our cover letter, but obviously you don't want to write a cover letter that's 4 pages. I mean, clearly, you don't think faculty have time. Keep in mind, I don't know how it works. I'm sure it's the same at Florida and Tennessee. Here, your packet is viewed by all faculty. although they might be having a smaller set of faculty doing recommendation, all your packets are visible to everybody. So you want to make sure your packet is more appealing. So I would say maybe a couple of pages, not more than that, for your cover letter, maybe 2 to 3 pages for your CV, because especially if you put working papers and presentations, what Mike was saying, and classes and SEIs and things like that, it might like end up being 2 to 3 pages for your CV. So I would like not do more than that. I would not definitely do more than 2 pages for your cover letter. I think a 2-page cover letter communicating why you want to come and be a professor in an institution will do the justice more than like writing 6 or 7 pages. I did see one question on the side, Bala, about this reject and resubmit. I know.
Yeah. Please address that. Yes. I
agree with Janice about reject and resubmit. Is sometimes looked at as favorable and the reject. I always think about all these things as just terms and the terminologies that journals are using because they want faster conversions and all. I would not worry about it. I mean, like if you think your paper is a good paper and you're sending it to POMS or JOM or Management Science and you have a reject and resubmit, I would definitely put it in. I mean, like like I said, like the first appeal I have is not just the journals, but are there any coherent streams? And is that coherent stream is something that we want to be a part of? And then when we start talking to you as well, we would get into all the possible conversations of what reject and resubmit means and all those things. So don't worry about it. I would not hide anything is what I'm saying. Very quickly on the second thing about postdocs, there was another question about postdocs from IIT Madras. I am from Chennai, so good to see you here. It's great. I mean, like, I think that the practice of postdocs is not that common, as you can imagine, in PhD programs. But we do see some schools, especially European schools and Asian schools, where they're getting their PhDs there and coming in. I do encourage you to think about that option, especially if you want to like move from India or Asia or Europe to United States. I think that communicates a lot. If you come to the US and have a postdoc working relationship with a professor and write some papers out there, it definitely pays off. So if you have that in mindset, I would highly encourage you to like do that. We've at Ohio State, we've had a few postdocs like that who came from European institutions and all, and then like they ended up like graduating from their institution and some things here with a paper, and they were successful.
Janice,
So
sorry, go ahead, Janice. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I would like to chime in on a couple of things. First of all, one other item about the CV, real quick. I am positively predisposed. If you have an MBA, put it there. That's a plus for if you're going to be in a school with a strong MBA program. If you have full-time work experience, put it there too. You know, to me, that's a signal of kind of maturity. Okay, with regards to the revise and resubmit, reject and resubmit, I tell my students that, you know, it's still a foot in the door. So I think that's fine to portray it as much. If you've got a reject and resubmit, say it on there. I mean, at least it's a signal that the reviewers found some merit there. Postdocs are not the usual path, but on the other hand, I think it can be a good path. And in particular, if it helps you to further develop your research plan, great. Then you'll be that much further along when you go on the job market. If you have bolstered your research and your vita.
Thank you, Janice. Another question that comes often about references, and I can tell you that I've done a lot of faculty searches before, and in fact, I'm doing one right now for our department. Sometimes some schools are very emphatic on having references up front. That might deter some candidates from applying because you have to get the reference. It takes a little time to get 4 or 5 references from colleagues that are very, very busy. How important are the references? At what point they become extremely important in your school? Aravind, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so we actually don't worry about references initially.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so as you all know, we are all connected, right? So we all have friends all over. I mean, so we can easily, if we need it, we can always go and indirectly ask about a student or so. So at Ohio State, we don't really care about the references. We care about the student and where they're coming from and what research focus they have. And maybe later on, if it is necessary, when it comes to the point where there is a debate between two people and all those things, maybe at that point reference comes in handy. But seriously, we don't really care if reference available on request.
That question comes often. It really varies. Unfortunately, we do interfolio. I don't know if you guys, and one of the problems we have, and I think we can control that a lot of good candidates wait to apply because the application is not complete until you put those references in. So, and I agree with you, Aravind, completely that it's probably not very prudent to have that. And after all, we get hundreds of applications. Eventually, only 3 or 4 of them get to come to campus, and one is going to get an offer. That's probably a great time to do some reference checking. So, Mike, what is the practice at your place, Mike?
Similar to Aravind, those don't really come into play early in the process. It's completely fine. We're not, before conference interviews, we're not going to be doing that. I think it might be a good practice on your CV to list who your references are, as opposed, you don't need to ask them for a reference letter. And then, we can contact those people at the direct point, at the appropriate point in the process. But we wouldn't actually start, other than kind of informal conversations, as Aravind mentioned, we wouldn't start asking for reference letters until we're down to the final few.
Okay. Janice, is it the same at Florida?
Yeah, similar. Just in general, I think references cannot really make your case, but they can kill your case, right? So I think, if you get lukewarm references, that's all right. But anyways, you don't want a bad reference.
Yeah, another practice I occasionally see from PhDs in the market is have their chairs write letters to the school. This is my PhD student. He or she has been working with me. Would that have any benefit at the outset of the interview, the search process?
Not really. Again, we get it. So every year,
we do too.
I write it too. So let me put it this way. I write when my student is in the market. I definitely write if I know somebody in a school that he or she is interested. I write it too. But at least from is it really waiting? Is it like, okay, if I don't get a letter, I'm not going to move the candidate forward? No, that's not the case. So definitely not the case. I will tell you one, like if I happen to know somebody. So let's say if you are working with an advisor, and that advisor is good friends with some professors in the institution that you're applying, it definitely, again, it's a gentle thing for the advisor to write it to the person saying, hey, you know what, this person is interested in coming and working with you guys. It doesn't really help them effectively, but it's a good practice. I do that. Like when my student applies to Texas A&M, for instance, I definitely would send an email to you, Bala, saying, I'm so excited that he or she is applying. That's a good practice, but it's not going to weigh in on that person's case.
So I want to change the gears a little bit. Let's suppose, you applied, you made a great case, and the schools seem interested in you, which at that point you probably made the first cut, most likely. So you get a phone call from a Zoom interviews even before conferences. Some schools do that. Tell us something about how do you handle the first interview, perhaps on Zoom, and maybe the next one might be at a conference. How do you handle that? What is the protocol? What kind of conversation that should take place to advance your interest, to advance your candidacy? So I'm going to go with Janice first. Janice, I got a phone call. Florida is interested in me. They want to talk to me on Zoom. It's before the conference. So what should I be prepared for?
So Bala, if you were my student, I would tell you, first of all, you have to have a solid pitch describing your research, and what you're going forward. That is probably the most important thing. Kind of like, I know we encourage MBA students to have an elevator pitch. You as a doctoral student should have something. Now, that being said, you have to be able to interact in the interview too. You can't just recite your memorized spiel about what your research is. So you probably want to practice that, before you have an interview. I might also give my student a list of potential questions that we have asked of candidates before, and tell my student, okay, you should think in your mind how you might have an answer for each one of these. And once again, not to memorize those answers and spit them out, but give you some idea of the range of questions. I think that's where I would start to advise.
Mike, my first interview at Tennessee.
First interview at Tennessee, yeah. So before I get to that, let me circle back, and I'll just chime in also, not to overemphasize, but on the reject and resubmit, definitely, if you got an official reject and resubmit decision from the journal, definitely put that on your CV, because that, as Janice said, that does make a big difference. That's much different than you can see a CV sometimes where it has 4 papers and they're all in progress target management science, or in progress target J. That doesn't, anybody can target JOM, right? But when you get past that, I'm planning to send this to management science and I got to reject and resubmit from management science, that is an external signal that that adds a lot of value. So please put all those, if you get any of those officially from the journal, please put those on there. So now, I've reached out, we're going to talk, Bala, about a job at Tennessee. In that 30 minutes, first thing I would say is be very well prepared. Kind of as Aravind said before, know something about my school, signal that you're serious about this. There's a matching problem. We want to make sure that we're serious and that you're serious about it. So come very well prepared. And this is our chance to kind of get you off the cuff a little bit, especially about your research, right? So anyone can work hard and come up with a perfectly crafted research statement, but can we dig into a little bit? How do you see your research agenda playing out? What kind of things are you passionate about? So we just dig a little bit more to see if you can really articulate and we can really see that path towards success in a particular research area. And then, I think as Aravind mentioned earlier, in the first few minutes, we also are assessing how would you do in the classroom, right? So just be prepared, be personable. Are you comfortable speaking? We'll get a lot more of that when you get to the campus visit, but we're even seeing some of that in the conference interview. Like, is this a person who eventually could be teaching MBA students? And we're trying to assess that more on the interpersonal side as well.
Aravind?
Yeah, great points from Janice and Mike. The only thing I would add to that is, like, again, if you want to interview at Ohio State, I would definitely ask who's the interviewees. So definitely I would like to know more about the 3 or 4 people, and the administrative assistants will give you that information. Will say, okay, you're meeting with Mike, Galbreth, Bala, Shetty, and Janice. I would definitely do a little bit of research about what they are. And again, I don't want you to overly connect your research with them, but at least do a little bit of homework to know what their areas of focus are. So that way you can have an educated conversation with them. So usually a 30-minute interview, the way I would plan it is like for 5 minutes or so, it's all about, they're going to ask you, the first question anybody will ask you is, tell us more about your research. That's the first question they'll ask you. And I think at that point, I want you to be a little bit more passionate, but at the same time, don't overkill them. Don't just go into all the details that, again, consumes more time. Be passionate about what you're doing and why it's an important problem. And then have a hook there. I would say have a hook there in a way that the people who are interviewing you are coming back to you with more questions. I would always reserve 5 to 10 minutes at the end, like what Mike said, to have some open conversation about some questions about what does life as an assistant professor in your institution look like? How should you succeed? Don't get into this minutia of, okay, what's the A journal and all. I mean, everybody would know that, or you should know that when you come there and all. So I would get some high level aspect of what are some things that I should be doing to be a successful assistant professor there. I'm assuming everybody wants, at this, are looking for assistant professor job. Again, it varies if you're an associate, if you're applying for associate or full, but the idea around this is what are some key factors of success. I would always also close out with, again, something about what makes you a good candidate there. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your part to sell them. So what makes you a good candidate there? I would always close it up. So the only thing I would add is basically do some homework with the people who are going to be that in the interview panel and ask some curious questions that can engage with them.
Thank you. So are there questions?
Well, I was going to.
Oh,
yeah,
go
Mike.
ahead. Oh, sorry,
I'm
Mike,
sorry,
go ahead, Mike.
I want to just reiterate something Aravind mentioned. I think this, for me personally, this screening interview is not the time to ask about, what are tenure criteria? What's the journal list? There's a lot of time in my mind to get into that. We only have 30 minutes. That's really getting down into the weeds. If we both decide to move forward with this, there'll be plenty of time to dive into that. So I personally like to talk just more about research and what you're passionate about and that kind of thing.
That's my next question was going to be, the questions definitely no, right? And we have all been through, I have I had a recent applicant ask me, the first question asked me is, what is the salary range? Right. So it's, but so I think, I think the important thing is to show excitement about the institution, a genuine, authentic excitement, not that's something and kind of understand what their institution is about, where the institution is. Those are the questions I think. At least when I was in the dean's office, we got 30 minutes, and I interviewed so many colleagues. I got 30 minutes to every faculty member who walked into Mace Business School when I was executive associate dean, and in 30 minutes we make an assessment whether he or she would be a great candidate for in our building. So, and that 30 minutes becomes so important. I think those 30 minutes are not on specifics, or 30 minutes on where is the institution heading, how can I contribute to what the institution goals are, so on and so forth. So I think the first interview, if you're lucky to get one, a Zoom interview, become very critical in terms of how you present yourself as a viable candidate for that particular institution. So, so the next is, let me see if I have anything. I know Aravind and Janice have been responding to questions on chat. I'm so sorry, I cannot multitask. I'm terrible about that. So let's see. And so I passed the first Zoom interview, and then I made the second cut. So I got a call to meet Professor Aravind Chandrasekaran at a DSI or in POMS. POMS is much later, so we don't do career services. Help me out here, Aravind. How do I prepare for that, possibly a 30-minute meeting at a DSI conference? Etiquette, what do I wear? How do I carry out that conversation? And all that becomes very important when you're picking one person out of 250. So address that, Aravind, for us.
So a couple of things. First of all, again, usually in Ohio State, at least, it used to be like a multiple faculty. So let's say it's me and Janice. Janice, welcome to Ohio State, by the way.
Oh,
so
thanks.
Let's say it's me and Janice coming in. I would definitely, again, like the same practices that you followed in the Zoom interview, I would definitely do the same thing, not to talk more about your research for 30 minutes, have that research speech for because the first question, no matter who's interviewing you, is going to ask you, tell us more about your research. So make sure that you are well prepared in answering them. I would definitely dress business professional. Again, like how often we wear ties and suits. I think this is your time to wear ties and suit. I would definitely be business professional. I would also, in addition, like to doing these things, I would also like, again, you've all done your homework about me and Janice, which is good. But I would also ask some follow-up questions about like, hey, like if you recollect your time at Ohio State when you were there, what were some things that, again, like you did as a junior scholar there that helped your career grow there? Things like that. Again, it's more of engaging with them rather than just like asking the same question, tell us more about Ohio State. Because there'll be some time that we are giving you. We'll always give you some time. Do you have any questions about it? Don't ask them about like Columbus. Go look at study Columbus, Ohio. You can find it. Or if you want to know about Ohio State and Fisher, you can find it. Ask something that's a little more like, what are some things that are some secret for success, even if I'm not making there at Ohio State, that can be applicable for me wherever I go. Something more personable allows you to like connect with the faculty, because I'll tell you what happens here. So once we do this, we go back and we report to the larger faculty. We say, here is what. And in those personal connections will make me remember you more, because when Janice and I do the interviews at Informs or DSI, we're talking to like 20 people. And you want to be shining as like the top 3 among the 20 people. Yes, your research passion will get me there, but some additional aspects of you engaging with the interviewers would actually get there. So I would always think about knowing a little bit more, asking some intelligent questions as a follow-up.
Janice, so how, in that personal meeting at DSI or Informs or wherever that might be, and I have information systems, so they're in Hicks and AMCIS, how do I convey that, Janice? How do I convey that I'm going to be a great fit, I'm going to be a great colleague, and yet be authentic?
Sure, I think you have to do your homework once again about the folks who will be in that room. And it's not just communicating that spiel. I like what Aravind was getting at, that you have to be more conversational in nature, especially when you have a personal in-person interview. And you have to be able to connect. So if there is a way that you can connect your research team to Aravind's or Mike's or whoever is in that room. And then also, be a real authentic person, right? I think that's the other thing too, that if you can connect on some element, whether it's on your research or just something, if you that helps you to stand out. Yeah.
Mike, I'm sure, I suspect you have interviewed many at conferences. So what is a turnoff for you?
Yeah, well, I think by far the most common mistake is treating it like a monologue, right? Kind of both. This has already been mentioned before. I mean, someone that comes in who basically just talks for 30 minutes and almost delivers a speech that they've memorized. That's not a good approach. I mean, you want to show that you can listen as well as talk, right? So talks, of course, everyone's going to ask you. You want to articulate your research passion, but also ask some questions and listen to the answers and engage in some sort of a conversation instead of just coming in as kind of highly rehearsed and talking the whole 30 minutes. Come with a lot of questions and curiosity and do your homework and try to engage with the person other than just giving them a speech.
So one other point to make, and I think this is a good one, is that when you are on the job market, it's a unique opportunity. I mean, you're clearly wanting to find a job, you're wanting to connect with that university, but you have to keep in mind that this is a unique opportunity to network and to make connections. And just remember that even though you may not get a job offer from that particular university, you may make a connection with a researcher here, that is doing research in your area going forward. And this is really a unique opportunity. You don't really have that same kind of networking opportunity as you do when you are on the job market. So look at it that way.
This may be a question, maybe it's a bit silly, but attire when you meet, and the reason I'm asking you this is because there was a time when I had a candidate who met with my dean on jeans and t-shirt. And, our dean was an accountant. He was very, very particular about what you wear, starched shirts and, ties and suit. And this candidate met with the dean. In about 5 minutes, dean called me and said, hey, it shows lack of respect for our institution. At least at a minimum, you have a business jacket and a tie. Or what's your view on it? How is it important that they attire properly? I know these are superficial stuff on the large scheme of things, but it can make or break your candidate, at least in some places, depending on who you're interacting with. So, Mike, you want to address that?
Yeah, I've got stories of similar things as well. And I tell my students at all levels, it's much less awkward to be overdressed than to be underdressed, right? So underdressed gets really awkward really fast, right? So I would always err on the side of being a little overdressed, and I think that applies in this situation as well. I mean, it's not going to hurt you to be a little bit more formally dressed than maybe you think you should have, but on the other hand, a mistake on the other side can really rub some people the wrong way. So I would avoid that. Yeah.
Okay, good. There's a question.
Let me just add to.
Go ahead, Janice.
Okay, being the sole female on the panel, I think I think it's good to go with a suit too. Nothing revealing on interviews. So even as a female, I would wear a suit to an interview. Guys, suit and tie. Yeah. So I have been in presentations where doctoral students come in and have a midriff shirt showing their stomach, and that's not appropriate. So please, make it formal business attire.
So I'm reading a question on the chat. So if you have any thoughts on it, because I don't, can you please talk a little bit about diversity statements and what makes a good diversity statement from a hiring committee point of view? Now, just to give you a little bit of background, we required those, but the Texas made it illegal this year. So we can no longer request diversity statements from candidates of any kind. So we are not requesting those statements beginning this year. I don't know if that's a practice at your school, if you would like to address, if it is, how best to put that together. Aravind?
at Ohio State, again, I don't think it's illegal, but like we don't require. So we, again, like we don't require at this point about diversity statement. But I can tell you again, like diversity is something that you don't need to have a separate statement. I mean, like a lot of those things can be very much visible in like how you talk again. So all these statements are less useful, especially when you're going to the advanced rounds of the thing. When I'm seeing you and I can see with that, and diversity could be so many things, right? Diversity of handling people, diversity of students, diversity of thoughts. It's a lot. So it's very easy for some of us to say, okay, can this person be fitting? I would say the way we would evaluate diversity or accepting inclusivity, I would just flip it and say it's more inclusivity, is can this person be included in our Fisher faculty? Can this person be a fabric of my OBA group? Where again, like we can talk to them, we can collegially involve with them. So again, I would not like, definitely if my university does not require a diversity statement like what Texas A&M does. So I have minimal comments on it, but I can tell you that diversity or inclusivity is definitely an important criteria for you to get a job in any institution, because you want to be a part of them rather than just like saying, okay, I just want to come and work. So there could be other ways that can be evaluated by the committee.
Aravind, I want to stand corrected, because Texas, we do value diversity of ideas and thoughts, and but our diversity statements need a bit more than that.
Exactly. Same thing. I completely understand when you said that. Very similar.
Correct. Yeah, we did. Mike, any thoughts on diversity statements? They are still in effect in Tennessee?
So we don't similar to Aravind, we don't require a diversity statement from the candidates. We would welcome that. I mean, it's certainly diversity inclusion is a significant initiative across the University of Tennessee and specifically in the business school. But in terms of putting that in the initial packet, I would say we would welcome seeing that if it's not generic, right? So three or four just kind of generic sentences is not going to make a difference. But if you have something specific you'd really like to articulate about your passion for diversity and inclusion, we would certainly love to see that. And even if it's not in the initial packet, that is something that we would be kind of exploring in the interview phases of the process.
Janice, in Florida?
Yeah, so I will add, I don't think it's required at Florida, but I do think it's required at several institutions outside having had doctoral students on the job market within the last 3 years. Many of them, it was a requirement to prepare that. And I would mirror what Mike says. I think that the important thing about a diversity statement is that it's authentic. You have an authentic view and story. Don't embrace somebody else's story, just tell your story. That could be whether it was something growing up or an experience that you saw in the classroom when you were teaching, or just something authentic. So yeah, be yourself and tell a true story. It doesn't have to be outrageous or anything. So just be authentic.
So let me again, I'm gonna take you through different stages of the process. I think our next session is about campus interviews, presenting your research, so on and so forth. So you finished the interview at DSI. You were shortlisted, lucky enough to shortlisted to interview at DSI or POMS and Informs. What is the protocol after that in terms of your conduct? Are the things do or don'ts? Because a lot of times I'm day after I come from Informs or DSI, I get emails from prospectives, especially that can work against them, especially when you're dealing with so many of those. So tell us about what should be done following the interview. Just wait and for them to contact you, reach out to them. What is the best practice? Aravind?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely sending a thank you note is not a bad.
Thank you is okay. Yeah. They should send thank you notes. Yeah.
But then make sure you send it to the right people. I have had a few occasions where they send it to me with a different name. So clearly, like they said, "Dear John, thank you so much." When they send it to me, when it was John Gray and I interviewed. So it's kind of, again, make sure you don't do those kind of snafu. But other than that, sending it good. I would definitely, again, especially if you think, and as a interviewee, how that conversation went in that 30 minutes with them, what kind of engagement, and I'm sure the people in the room would have talked to you more about the next steps and all. I would definitely like follow up with them. If they say something like, hey, we're going to meet in the next few weeks and we would be shortlisting our candidates, I would just like contact them in the next 2 weeks. I would not harass them immediately. I would contact them next few weeks. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you had a very good connection with the faculty there. If you start communicating with them right from the thank you note, they will reciprocate. And that already starts a line of communication with them, irrespective of whether you are getting there or not. I mean, you're getting there is great. But that's what the job market is going to do to you. I mean, like there are several friends that I made in my job market. I still am friends with, although I did not go and work in their place. But I would definitely start practicing those kind of etiquettes by sending a thank you note, following up. If there was a conversation that was done where they said follow up in a couple of weeks, I would definitely follow up with them to just hear more about it. And don't worry about it if you're not the first list of people that are not flown in. Because again, like as you know, this is kind of a stochastic process where they fly you in and maybe the faculty decide those 3 are not good and they come back. So always maintain a good relationship with them in a way that maybe like sometime down the line things are happening to you. So I would definitely do that.
Janice, the etiquette after you get your first interview at the conference.
Yes, I think a simple thank you note is fine. I kind of disagree with Aravind responded to something. Should you reach out if you have a positive change in your publication status? In that, I think you should only reach out if you have an acceptance or a conditional acceptance. I don't want to see every single step that I don't want to see a note from you every single step of the paper. And I would warn you against cyber nagging people. So I know nobody wants to see, a gazillion messages from a candidate that can really work against you. So be professional in your communication, succinct, a simple follow-up is good. Yeah, if you get an acceptance, reach out. I would leave it at that.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't think I get as much good news from journals as Janice does. It's so rare for me to get any positive news. It's not going to happen that often, right? So I will not be bothering you as I update my things. But yeah, I think a short thank you email is appropriate and helps. And I think other than that, yeah, as was said, normally at the end of the screening interview, there'll be some sort of a rough timeline. You can ask about when do you think, and if they say, hey, we'll be in touch in 2 weeks and you haven't heard from them, I think it's appropriate to say, hey, I'm really interested, because I do think that at the margin that can make a difference. We're trying to find a good match, and if it's close, right, and someone says this person, has not been nagging me, but they reached out and said, hey, I'm still really interested. I just wanted to let you know, it's been a couple weeks. I'm still highly interested. I think an occasional touch point like that on the margin could make a difference. But I would wait until after the duration has passed that they said they needed. Right? So if they said, give us 3 weeks, I'd give them 3 weeks, and then maybe a friendly, I'm still really interested email, I feel like comes across well.
I see a question on on chat. In addition to publications, how are teaching cases and media publications about one's research likely to be evaluated by the hiring committee? With the hiring committee, in other words, value cases and media publications during the evaluation process. I don't know, Mike, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you
okay,
go first,
I've got something to say here. So okay, actually teaching cases are important, particularly if you're interviewing for a position like a clinical faculty member. That is very important. So I think most of us have been coming from a perspective, giving you answers of a perspective about if you're applying for a tenure track faculty. So if you are applying for a lecturer position or a clinical faculty member, I think teaching cases are very important. If you're still, even if you're applying for I think it shows that you're well-rounded too, even if you're applying for a tenure track position, and it can further bolster your research. It could say you've got a really effective way to communicate your research. The media publications, I think that's a nice, but it's not going to make or break your case.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, similar. These are good things. Neither of those are really going to be a big factor in a tenure case, right? So if we're thinking about, can this person be successful, they're not going to be relevant directly there, but they do speak to relevance. And I think relevance of research is becoming increasingly important. So if you say, not only do I have this paper that's maybe in a working paper in the revision process, but it's been picked up by a news outlet, I think that certainly helps. I would mention it, but it's still the academic publications are going to be the name of the game in terms of being successful as an assistant professor. But these things, I don't see a downside to including those personally.
Aravind?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like it's a order winner, definitely not an order qualifier. Your research statement is your order qualifier. Your research papers are your order qualifier. I will tell you, like, again, like if you go to some schools like Darden, they might be interested in like teaching cases and all, because again, there is a heavy component of teaching there. But definitely even schools like Ohio State, we definitely appreciate it, but that's not going to give us a job yet. It's probably going to be your research papers.
You know, I just realized that Aravind has Rakesh, Mike has Hussein, and Janice has Emre, 3 of our star PhD students. And it wasn't planned. I just realized, I said, wait a minute, I have Ohio State, Tennessee, and Florida, and we sent 3 of our very, very best PhD students there. Good guys to all 3 of them. So here's a question that comes often. Janice, if you could address this, what is the strategy in applying? Do we apply wholesale everybody? Like, for example, you know, last year we had one position for analytics, AI, kind of related stuff, and we had 250 applications, PhDs. What is a good strategy? Do you target schools, or do you just send a resume to everybody who has an ad in the, you know, at the conference? Janice, could you address that? What might be a good strategy?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. It really depends on what the job market is like that year. I mean, if there are not many jobs out there, then you probably should apply to them all. But do not apply to any that you wouldn't go to. For example, if there's a job available in a country that you could never see yourself teaching in, don't apply. Don't waste people's time. So view it from that respect. Now, if the job market is robust, there are a lot of jobs out there, you know, target the one, make your list of favorites and spend the most attention on those. You know, you might have some backups too, if you know, but yeah, you could be a little bit more choosy in that case, but it really depends.
Choosy can work in your favor as well. That way you don't have to study the strategic document for 250 schools. Right, you can actually you can focus on a few that really, really, you know, important to you. So
and let me just add too, that, you know, we've been talking about this whole thing, creating your resume, doing this. It's overwhelming the amount of time that you spend on the job market stuff. So, you know, I would say put good faith efforts into your CV. Don't hold up your dissertation because you're focused on your CV and this process. Put good faith efforts into those things in that preparation. Don't let it become all consuming.
So what is a good strategy, Mike? Should I tell my students only to apply to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and Wharton and Kellogg, or, you know, or find something more appropriate for, you know, where they are in terms of their career?
Yeah, I mean, Janice said it perfectly. I would say, if apply to places you could see yourself going. That doesn't mean only apply to your top 10 choices, but if you literally could not see yourself going a place for whatever reason, then I would of course not waste people's time. And this kind of gets back to an earlier question in the chat about what do you do about candidates that are overqualified for your position. Someone asked for what they mean by that. I think I know what you mean. I mean, I think when I get an application to the University of Tennessee, I'm assuming that application is submitted in good faith and that you're at least interested in considering the University of Tennessee. So we consider all applications, but I would cast a wide net. The time to be picky is when you have multiple offers. Then you can start getting selective. Until you have multiple offers, I would say, can I possibly see myself here? And if the answer is yes, I would suggest applying there.
Aravind?
Yeah, just to add to that, again, your best resource is your advisor. I mean, like, or your members of your faculty. I mean, each one of you are coming from doctoral programs where you're not the only doctoral student. There are going to be other doctoral students out there that they've been like ahead of you, or like, and they have been in other institutions. So you would know exactly like what, going back to what Janice said, you would know exactly what's an aspirational school, what's a peer school, what's again a safe school and all, based on the history of your program and all. I would definitely talk to my advisor on the committee. I mean, like, I did a lot of those conversations with my advisor on my committee to say, because again, they will tell you, like, I had a student here once where he was applying to schools that I know for a fact, like, he's not going to go. He's just afraid. I mean, everybody has been there. Everybody's afraid because we haven't gotten that one job yet. And we want to apply to all these schools that we think are safe schools. But really, are you going to go there? I mean, is your advisor ready for you to go there? Or your committee is ready for you to go there? Probably not. They're going to like find other ways of making sure you have a job. So I would definitely, along with all the wonderful ideas Janice and Mike said, I would definitely include my committee. I would like have a set of schools and go to my committee or my advisor, if you work with them closely, to say, hey, what are the schools that I should apply? Yeah, of course, like, and sometimes they would give you some ideas. And then I would then take it, especially if you have a spouse or somebody with you, I would take that to my family also, to make sure I don't want to go to a school where my spouse doesn't want to come. I mean, it's very important for you to have that synergy too. So it's kind of a process, but in my opinion, again, like, if you apply for like 200 schools, it's very impossible for you to actually do the due diligence for 200 schools. So I would say like maybe like 30 to 40 schools is actually more than enough. Nowadays, application is like cheap, just an email, but like 30 to 40 schools is what I would apply for. And I would split them into 3 categories. I would say there are 3 or 4, not more than that, as like really the Harvards and Whartons and all those schools for me. But then I would have about 15 schools that are mostly in my peer schools, or like somebody that I know my program has placed there, so I know I can go there also. And then I would say another 10 to 15 are safe schools that I know myself, my wife, and my kids and are comfortable going there, in addition to being safe. So I would not do more than that, because that's plenty for you, given that you have connections across.
Thank you, Aravind. I want to give each one of you, time to perhaps things that we have not covered in making a case, because the theme today is about making a case. I have next time I have Don Eisenstein on September 15th. I have Eve from Emory. I have Nada from in Northeastern, and also Rogelio Oliva, my colleague next door. And we will be talking about interviews, job talks, and presentation, when we actually arrive on campus. But are there anything that we missed that may not have covered that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so let me start with a couple of observations. I don't know how many of you in the call are actually like in the market this year. So if you're in the market this year, maybe this may not be applicable for you. But I would say if you're in the 4th year, you have another year to go, your job prospect starts at that point. So don't wait till the end. Like, don't wait till the POMS of your 4th year to go and introduce yourself to faculty from other schools and all. Start networking. I mean, like, there is great conferences that are happening throughout the year. So Informs, DSI, POMS, AOM, and the list goes on. I would start networking when I say networking, I'm not like harassing somebody. Let me be very clear. Like going and meeting them, expressing an interest of like, again, maybe down the line, like coming to that school or expressing some interest in that area that they're working on. I would start doing it in your, I would say like once your dissertation ideas are formed, meaning like you're in the 3rd year or more than 3rd year, where you're ready to like now talk about what you're doing, I would start developing that practice in a way that, like when the person is now like looking at you in the 5th year of the, typically 5 years is what we have here. So 5th year is when you start applying. I would know this person already. It's not like I'm looking at the resume and looking at the face of the person for the first time. Hey, I met them last year in POMS during a social where they came and talked about what they're doing and all. I think that is very important, in my opinion. Again, like the job market, in my opinion, starts a little earlier than the market that actually happens. So if you're not a fifth-year candidate, but if you're a fourth-year person, that's happening here, make that as a practice, because definitely everybody, I'm sure Bala, Janice, and Mike would agree, like, it's always pleasant, like when you go to a conference and somebody comes and says, hey, I've read your paper, it's great. Not just like, don't go overboard on that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, but just like make sure that you understand what their work is and you appreciate what they've done, and start building that relationship earlier in the cycle. So if that's something that hasn't been talked right now, Bala, I thought that is an important point for them to think about.
Aravind, that's, I think, the great point. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is, all of us know that, the network that we build by meeting colleagues, the conference is very early on. We encourage a lot of our PhD students to get out there to POMS or decision sciences. We try our best to fund the trip as well. But I think that's, you're absolutely correct. Your job search doesn't start in the fourth year. It starts actually in the very first year as you learn, go to conferences, listen to keynotes, see what other people are doing. I think that's part of developing yourself to be a great academic career. So that, a great point. I think yes, we strongly advise all of our PhD students to start that from first year itself. Anything we missed, Mike? Anything we missed you want to address?
No, I'll just reiterate. That's such a great point by Aravind. I think that, I mean, a lot of us are introverts. I certainly am, right? So it may not be, the top of your list to go to the conference social event and start walking around introducing yourself to people, but I would encourage you to do it anyway. It's people, you'll find that people are really happy for you to come up and talk to them. If you see me, come talk to me. I would love to talk to you at one of those social events. And I think the earlier you get these relationships going, the better. And I remember as a doctoral student, there's certain senior professors that I introduced myself to so many times, and they kept forgetting who I was. So I introduced them myself at POMS. Next year, they have no idea who I am. So I introduced myself again. That's just the way it goes. Eventually, you start building this network. So I wouldn't give up and try to break out of the shell. And that gets to the other thing I'll just emphasize is, try to engage people in conversation. Not just one way. I know you have a lot of exciting things to talk about, but listen as well as talk. And the other thing I would say that we haven't really touched on yet is I know that Bala, you're going to do the job talk next time, but my thoughts on the job talk when you get to campus, I would approach the job talk as not just about research. So we're going to have your working papers. We're going to talk to you about your research at dinner. We're going to have lots of time to hear about your research. The job talk, you're also being assessed on your ability to stand up in front of a group and communicate. The job talk's almost as much about assessing your teaching as your research, right? Can you get up there? Can you it's not just being smooth, or it's more about just, can you put together a polished presentation? Are your slides really well done? Do you seem really well prepared? Can you time it right? Can you manage the timing right? All those things. So I would encourage you, when you get to the point where you're putting together the job talk, remember that you want to come across as somebody who everybody in the room is thinking, I could easily see that person in the classroom because they got up there and did a great job with this material. So that's one other piece of advice I'd give.
Janice, anything that we missed?
Sure, just two small items to piggyback on that networking idea. I think, when you are in your doctoral program earlier, you should try and furthermore connect with the smaller community, not just go to Informs or POMS. Those are huge conferences, right? But, see if you can connect with the smaller community, whether it be, for example, product development or product innovation community. That I'm a member of that college, and I would consider that to be my home college. I have branched out to sustainability. I know Mike Galbreth is part of that community, but that makes it that much easier to network if you go to those communities, you go to their business meetings, you're sitting in those sessions, etc. So I think that's a good way to connect with the researchers who are interested in similar topics to you. Second thing is, I cannot I need to state the importance of, when you are at one of these interviews, whether it be on Zoom or a conference interview, do your homework about that school, know who it is you're talking to, have some idea of their publications, have some idea of the school, at least read basic things on their website. Yeah, because it can be a little off-putting, particular when you're in a conference interview and somebody says something like, well, what research do you do, or something like that. I think the more preparation you can do to be able to connect and know exactly what those folks do, the better off you'll be.
Thank you, Jeff. So, I'm a very strong proponent of networking because you have at conferences, small communities, definitely. The people that you see in the field, the legends and people you're in awe, you have all these notions about them, but you go and meet them at the conference and have a, cocktail next to them, then all of a sudden realize that they are just like any of us, and they're very friendly, very supportive. And I've had so many of those experiences at Informs and DSI and POMS where, man, some of the best known scholars that, you read their work. So take advantage of that. These are very, very nice folks. I think they love to visit with you. They love to talk to you. In my long career, I have never, ever met somebody at the very high end where, they walk around with a big chip on their shoulder. That's very unusual. So take advantage. Networking is really good right from day one. Grab an opportunity to review a paper. Show that you're interested in reviewing a paper. Editors are always looking for some good PhD students to review some papers. Volunteer to put a section together. We did that very early in our career. Even PhD students, our professors will put our name on, putting sessions together, POMS or DSI. So I think there's so many opportunities out there to take advantage of. Let's see, there's one question here that I want to repeat to the our panel. It's some schools are very specific in their ads about what kind of candidates they would like. For example, research in AI, ML. If my research does not fit that description at all, should I still apply? So that's a question about the fit. What, am I wasting my time? We talked about this a little bit in general, but perhaps we can address that to this one specific question from a participant. Mike, you want to go first, Mike?
Yes, since you used the phrase "at all," I would say don't apply. So if your research does not at all fit the job description, I would say it's best not to apply. That they put that guidance in there for a reason. But of course, I would also maybe read it closely and say, if it says something like preference for AI, it's open, but we would prefer AI, then you might still fit that broadly. If it says this is specifically for someone in this area and you do nothing in that area, I would say not apply. So I guess I would kind of read it closely, and my advice would depend on exactly the specific situation.
I completely.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here, that's what we do, Mike. Like we say preference, but the reason why we put preference is because, let's say there is a brilliant candidate out there. And then we want to get them, right? We don't want to shut down that opportunity. So that's why at Ohio State, what we do is we say preferably in an area. So if that's the case, I would again talk to them and apply them. But if they say something like we really look for this one, yeah, I agree with Mike on that. The chances of you actually getting noticed there is very slim. So you may not apply that.
Janice, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with Mike about that.
Yeah. And I want to pitch for POMS a little bit here because this is I am the VP for membership for POMS. We have, and I saw 250 registrations from PhD students from across the world. So I sent an email to all of them encouraging join POMS. It's free. It's a wonderful way to build a network. POMS, I've been to a lot of conferences. POMS is a wonderful conference, a lot of fun. They do a socializing quite well. Sushil is a master in making sure that we are all happy at the conferences. So please take the time. You can go to POMS website, and remember, it's free. It won't cost you anything, but it will give you so many different benefits of a great organization. I suspect that's the same with Informs. I think Informs may have a minimum, very bare minimum membership for students. Perhaps DSI the same thing. So a great organization. Take advantage of that. Final thoughts from our panel. You want to go first, Janice?
Yeah, so good luck, everybody.
And I suspect Ohio State in the market, Tennessee is in the market this year. Florida is in the market. I mean, I would be surprised if you're not. We are in the market, so we are all here. You get this great school.
We have multiple positions this year, so look out for us. And
you're hiring, recruiting this year for assistant professors, Mike?
In supply chain, yes, right. So we're actually split into multiple groups: supply chain versus business analytics and OM. But yes, so we'll be on the market as well. And I would just say thanks everyone for joining this, and congratulations for doing this. You're obviously on the ball if you're taking advantage of these optional opportunities to learn more. The job market is quite a unique beast, and so congratulations to all the students for taking the time and thank you so much, Bala, for putting these together for us. I think it's been great.
Janice, are you in the market?
For IT position.
Okay. Yeah, we're in the market. We have a position which is kind of open supply chain or IT and the best player situation. So at the open rank and open position. So I'm leading the search this year. But let me thank the panel. I know how busy you all folks are, but thank you so much. This is I look at this as a great investment that we make to advance the future of our organization, our field. These are the folks that will be carrying the torch, if I may, right down the road. So really appreciate your time. So thank you for joining us. Let's see, Rakesh, are you still there? Rakesh, you want to add anything, Rakesh?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you for organizing this. I think hopefully it is helpful for all the students on the market. Good luck to all the candidates.
With that, I'm going to conclude this session. And again, Aravind, Mike, and Janice, thank you so much again. I hope to see you at one of the conferences, one of the POMS parties. So thank you. Thank you. If Sushil is still there, thank you, Sushil. Appreciate your support. And with that,